Hello, and welcome to the next episode of our podcast, Leveling Up. And today I'd like to welcome Kate J, who is the Head of Procurement Services for Skanska. Hello, and welcome.
Hi, good morning. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining me today. It's going to be great to talk about your career and to share some of your experiences. And I know you've done some incredible things already in your career, and particularly at the moment in Skanska as well. So it'd be great if you can share with us. I know it's really important, your supplier relationship management program that you have at Skanska. Can you share some more information in regards to what you're currently doing?
Absolutely. And perhaps I'll start with the why. It's very, very important for Skanska to have good relationships with the supply chain. We actually subcontract over 80% of our work. So it's absolutely critical that our supply chain and the projects have got good relationships, and procurement are absolutely pivotal to that. We do have sustainability targets as a business. So of course we have lots of, like many companies, we have goals and targets that we must meet. And I think the other thing is that we want to ensure that we're making the best of our latest ERP system investment, which has given us actually as a procurement function a whole new perspective on supply chain. We're actually able to look at supplier performance and spend across the business, whereas previously a buyer would only be able to see active suppliers on their project. So whilst we've got sustainability goals as a business, we've also invested heavily in tools and systems that will help procurement do so much more with the supply chain. So, I mean, that says enough in itself about the why. Some of the things that we do, of course, is we have regular supply meetings, and we actually have a supply relationship meeting tracker for the very reason we're very conscious of siloed relationships. So we try and centralise information for the procurement team so that where we've got shared suppliers across different projects around the UK, we can understand what's going on with those suppliers. It also, I think for them as well, they know they're getting consistent messaging from Skanska, and it's absolutely critical that they trust us. We want them to choose to work with us on our projects. And of course, we want to have a two-way street discussion with them. So those supply relationship meetings are critical in terms of agendas. We try and ensure that we're covering things that make them feel comfortable in sharing, perhaps financial, pending financial risk, perhaps if they're subcontractors. We have levels of subcontracting we have to consider. So they have to be able to feel that they can come and talk to us openly about pending risk. It could be resource, could be behavioural risk, it could be health and safety. We are the channel for them to come and talk to us in the same way that we talk to them. So it's absolutely vital that they can do that in both ways. We also run supply chain events, like many companies and like many tier ones. We try and do forums. We've done some brilliant ones recently in central London with our building services operating unit, who brought in the supply chain to talk to them about particularly about the upcoming market, but also gave them an opportunity and almost like a round robin around the room with various sectors of health and safety, sustainability. The diversity and inclusion team were there, and it gave the supply chain an opportunity to come and talk and ask questions, again in a comfortable environment. And I think that's really important. And one other thing that we do, which I don't know if it sets us apart from others, is a supply chain survey. So quarterly, we do an event led by procurement, where we invite our sort of, I guess it's probably our most used supply chain at the time, critical supply chain, and we bring them in to a live webinar, talk to them about various issues. And it's been a great opportunity recently, and I'll talk about it shortly, about being able to include questions around diversity, sustainability, and everything like that we're going to talk about today. I think it's just it reinforces Skanska's priority with supply chain relationships. We want those open forums. We're able to talk to them regularly, even if it's through newsletters. We also, as I say, do those live updates, which I think are fantastic.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it sounds you really do have that transparency with your supply chain. And as you say, it's so critical to be able to do that. And those types of events really help suppliers to feel like they are fully supported by an organisation, but it's a real true partnership. So I think that's great that you're doing all of that.
Yes, yeah, I think we have to make them feel valued, and for me, it's always trust. The trust is critical. That word trust, especially at the moment, we're in a tough market. It's risky. There's lots going on, economic factors impacting everybody. So I think everyone is choosing their work very carefully. They're choosing their supply chain very carefully, and they're monitoring and working together very carefully. So I think all that leads to you have to have a good relationship.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you mentioned there about the equality, diversity, and inclusion, and having that real focus. And I know that's a key strategy and something that Skanska really do invest in. And can you share with us what procurement are doing in that space and how they're supporting this?
Yes, of course. So Skanska do have diversity and inclusion leads. We have someone who's leading for the whole of Skanska, and across projects, they are working very well together to sort of embed that culture for the business, which of course is critical.
Mm.
In my role, I'm representing as an I&D lead for procurement. So as you say, we're doing some stuff specifically in that space. We are trying to learn, I guess, from the supply chain would be first of all. We want to understand what they're doing in that space, and also then how we can help them. So we recently did actually a survey to ask in one of those quarterly updates I just mentioned. We asked them what are they doing? Can they share with us? We like to share our inclusion and diversity calendar for the year, social value calendar, I think it's called, but we have so many events through the year. And we recently did Inclusion Week in September. And some of the procurement function managed to get some wonderful case studies from our supply chain who were happy for us to share. So we've documented those and shared across the business. Some examples where an Indian-owned company have actually come into our project, and they're helping us to deliver toolbox talks in Punjabi
Oh,
due to the workforce on that project. It's wonderful,
mm,
very, very industry-leading behaviour by that
mm.
supplier. We also had a gentleman, he was a group operations director from I say a small company actually, but he shared with us his very tough journey. He has a type 3 bipolar disorder, as well as autism, and he'd recently lost his wife. And working for a small company, the way that they handled that could have been, they realised they had to look at how they were going to support him differently. I've never experienced that before.
Yeah.
And what I loved about the story was that despite their size, they actually invested in a third party mental health corporation to support them and their employees going forward. So it's a great story to share for Skanska with other members of our supply chain who may be less mature in their journey, but we can at least kind of buddy people up together. And that's on my to-do list at the moment with our I&D lead, Georgia. She and I are looking to put some companies together who can learn from one another. Putting some of the more mature, not always bigger companies with some of the smaller ones who don't have the resource, or perhaps don't know where to start because of the complexity of the area. Putting them together, I think, is a great way of showing it's practical and scalable, rather than just words on a page saying we have these values. I think demonstrating those is really important. So we've seen some really great examples from our supply chain, and it's again, I suppose it's testament to the trust that they're sharing those with us and telling us it's okay to share those across our business. Now, my director is a fellow SIPS member, and also work very, very closely with the Supply Chain School, Sustainability School, for their development. They have absolutely amazing resource and material that will help suppliers with their diversity and inclusion journey, even just down to quizzes, surveys. They help guide people who might want to be fairness and inclusion ambassadors. So there's some really great material there. So during our performance management with the suppliers, we will often guide them to that material. If they're members of the school, they usually know about it. But for those who don't, we like to sort of encourage them to look at that material to help them start their journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. That is an amazing resource for those organisations as well. And I suppose potentially leading on from this as well is I know you've been a real advocate and a real champion of women and networking, and you're part of the Lean In network, I believe. Are you able
Mm.
to share some more in regards to the network and how it supported you personally in your career?
Yes, I mean, I'm really passionate about this one, and I'm sure I'd love to think that you'll get lots of queries about this for links, and people will start Googling and looking at it. So Lean In Circles were, I think they were inspired by something that Sheryl Sandberg, I don't know if you remember her, the founder, she worked in Facebook. She, that's quite dismissive. She worked in Facebook. I don't know what her role was, but she wrote a book in 2013 called Lean In, and the response to that was phenomenal because she just heard from I think the message that she was trying to deliver resonated with women across the world. So she sort of kicked off these Lean In circles, and they're peer groups who meet regularly to kind of grow together, and they're women, right? So they're peer groups of women coming together. And for me personally, I joined a circle because during COVID, I noticed that all my conference calls, and I'm sure many will relate, lots of screens of faces, they were all male. And that wasn't, necessarily a bad thing because I worked with some great people. But what I wondered was, where are my female allies? I felt a little bit alone. I was thinking, I don't know who to chat to about my ambition. Conversations are slightly different, and I just wanted advice or guidance. And I was saying, where are all my peers in the business? And of course, they were there. I just needed to network with them. I needed to find them. So I reached out to our women's network. Very fortunate in Skanska to have some brilliant employee networks, and the women's network had started these Lean In circles recently. So I joined one of those. And it was really one of the best things I ever did. I was part of that circle for 3 years. Through that circle, you talk. It's a very confidential, trusting space. You come together, irrespective of job role. There is nothing. You're just all equals in that room or on that call, and you're sharing sort of things that you might be coming up against, and they're all common themes. So maybe negotiating, having a difficult conversation, juggling so many things at home and at work, having that work-life balance, having confidence in taking on a new role versus perhaps a gentleman who would say they can do everything, but a female who would say, well, hang on, I could do this, but I don't know how to do this one, or I've never done this before. And women are very communal and very thoughtful in their responses, and perhaps the self-doubting that we're all probably very familiar with.
Yeah.
So for me, it was great to come together and chat through themes. We touched on really uncomfortable topics like, what's your 5-year development plan? I don't have one of those. I don't want to do that. But it was wonderful because the person who shared her story inspired me to actually not be scared of that discussion. And I actually went away and started to look at it. And I think the whole thing has enabled me to have more confidence in things that I wanted to do but didn't think I would be able to. So, for example, writing a 5-year development plan and not being scared by doing something like that.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to do TED Talks. So I actually went and watched a TED Talk. I took a step towards that instead of just dreaming about it. I actually went and watched a TED Talk locally, and it was so inspiring. So, working towards those things. Negotiating, I was due to be changing roles and needed to think about how I was going to approach that. Speaking up when there was some challenges from being in a minority group. The list is endless of benefits that I've gained from that circle. And more recently, a lot of us got together as members and talked about why we were benefiting from circles. So we actually decided to do a refresher and a kind of a promotion of sorts. So Skanska, we're currently running taster sessions, and we're inviting people from across the company to say, come along, come to one, have a go. If you like it, you can join a circle, or you might want to start one of your own. The interest has been huge. It's really reassuring to know, for those people, they're not alone. Again, the spectrum of people who are interested is very broad. We've got junior graduates, we've got quiet sort of data-driven people, and we've got really creative people. We've got female site managers, female project managers, females from within the office environment. They've all got something different to bring. And again, the level of trust, the sharing around personal level, menopause, autism, dyslexia. We're hearing so many so many stories as people open up in those safe spaces. I cannot Clearly I'm passionate about it, but I cannot stress enough how brilliant it's been for those who've taken part so far.
It sounds incredible, and it sounds so valuable to you personally within your career, but also to those individuals and the fact that you're now opening up so many different people in Skanska as well is amazing. So encouraging people to join as well. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of interest in this once this goes out and people watch this episode. So I'm sure you'll see the uptake even more so as well, which is good. And yeah, and you've kind of mentioned there as well, your career has been predominantly based within construction and steel. And obviously during your career, you've seen the landscape change quite significantly. So can you share with us some of those changes that you've experienced during your career?
Sure. I mean, I started, I hate to say this, 29 years ago in manufacturing, and for a Japanese company. Culturally hugely different. I was very fortunate to have a great role there and be well respected, but yes, obviously very different way of working back then. I think I remember the managers would smoke in the office. Only managers had window desks. And I think it was certain levels of managers were allowed arms on their chair, so there was a real hierarchy of sort of status in that respect, and I saw that. But I was very fortunate to always be extended some great sort of growth and learning opportunities throughout my career. But what I definitely see now, having moved from manufacturing into construction, whilst it's male dominated, naturally, I think commonly understood, but I think we're seeing so many more females in the industry. I love going on to we have a female CEO, we have women on site leading projects. We have engineers, female engineers. The landscape in terms of roles is not men for this and women for that. I've seen and experienced firsthand one supplier who waved a cup at me and said, "Have another top up of my tea, please." However, and that was quite recently, I'd say within the last 5 years, unfortunately. But what's different again about that landscape is that there was a man in the room who was an ally for me and spoke up and said, "Kitchen's over there, help yourself." That's not what Kate's here to do. And I think, those kind of conversations, that allyship and support is probably one of the biggest things I've seen change over the years through my career. The conversations have changed, right? The ability to talk openly about things, not necessarily to force one another to agree, but just to talk, just to have conversations. We've talked about pronouns, and being able to just even have those conversations and open that space for your team is critical. So that wouldn't have been a conversation, I wouldn't even think, 5-10 years ago, let alone 29 years ago. I think companies like Skanska are very aware of the upskilling, of the education, of the guidance that they can provide and their role in that. And we provide what's called active bystander training, which kind of is what it says. It's fantastic, and that's open to our supply chain as well, actually. So we do that for our Skanska employees, and particularly project level, and then we also extend that to suppliers. So for me, that in itself is a massive change, that we're offering much more collaborative approaches to upskilling people, particularly in this area.
Yeah, definitely. And everything that we've talked about today, I love the fact that you share so much of it with your suppliers. You really are, they are really embedded in Skanska, aren't they? And you take them on your journey to ensure the culture is shared, which is amazing.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not perfect, and it's evolving all the time. We some projects have got where they've got actually a vast supply chain on site with them. They're doing this almost weekly. It's wonderful to see it. And then other projects where we're in and out maybe less period of time, there's a slightly different relationship, but it's always there in terms of procurement and supply chain, ensuring that those discussions can be had and that support can be offered. We don't want it to be just statistics about, how diverse is our supply chain, and the statistics behind that wouldn't say anything for what we actually do. I think that's the important bit, is doing what we say we will do.
Yeah, definitely, completely agree. And you've achieved so much in your career personally. What would you say has been your proudest moment personally, and how do you think that's affected and influenced your career?
So this is really difficult for me because I've always loved every aspect of my career, and I couldn't bring it down to just one thing. But I will be unapologetic for what I will share, which is the pride I have in my daughter. So I have a 22-year-old daughter who's just started a master's. And she has been my biggest cheerleader when I've dropped her at childminders, when I have had to leave her at Nan's for a bit longer than planned, when I've had to dump her at a friend so I can go into London for a meeting, all those sorts of things as she was growing up. To see her graduate last year at Bristol University was just mind-blowing for me. And she said, it was wonderful to hear how she said how much my work and how I behave, I guess, in the workplace with my authenticity had really inspired her, which I really it just blew my brain. But I think to see her not at all following my footsteps, she's going into psychology. She's not going into corporate, she'll go to manufacturing, construction, none of those things. She'll be heading most likely into the NHS. And for me, just seeing how my career has quietly inspired her, my behaviours have quietly inspired her, and then seeing her graduate was just wonderful. And seeing so many females graduating in that room that day, wow. It was amazing. And they weren't all graduating. They were graduating in such a wide range of subjects, chemical engineering and things like that. Just wonderful, wonderful to see.
Yeah. Oh, that's lovely. I think much we focus on our careers in the sense of how it progresses us in our careers, but not actually when we think about it from a personal perspective. And that's lovely to hear that.
Yeah.
Wow. It sounds like she's got an amazing future ahead of her, which is great.
Yes, yeah. And I think for me it just meant she's seen me continually push those boundaries. I remember one of my most inspiring managers said to me about the glass ceiling that I kept putting above myself. And she said, you must push through that. She said, don't start a sentence with sorry. I used to do that a lot.
Yeah.
And, push through that glass ceiling. And it sounds a little bit cliche, but she was so right. And I've just recently sort of developed the Procurement Services role that I now have. That's a newly developed area for procurement. And I'm very proud of the audience I was able to take that to, who understood what we were trying to achieve and who granted me that, because it was new, it was something that isn't in Skanska already. So I'm very proud of that in terms of right now in my career as well.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. It's very inspiring, and I think a lot of what you've shared today is some amazing key takeaways for people, but also things that actually can start to implement within their own careers, particularly when we've talked about the leaning network as well, which is great. So thank you. You've shared so much and really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been really good to talk to you.
Thank you, Kate. And with regards to the next episode, if you'd like to feature in our Levelling Up podcast, then please do reach out to me. The details will be at the end of the podcast recording today. And what it leaves me to say is thank you again.
Thank you.